Who are the best performers on defense for the Miami Dolphins in their Week 2 preseason contest against Washington? We have graded the tape, and I have my results here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tip of the cap to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday tickets from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Was hoping to get this one out last night, and that's the thing about grading the tape is it takes a while. And notice I said and say in the title, we are grading the tape. We are not showing the tape. I have questions about that with the offensive one. If you want to see any of the game tape that I am breaking down and reacting to and why I grade some of the plays the way that I do, just know that that kind of content is not available here on the YouTube channel, but that is over on Substack with Touchdown Miami that you can go over and find it there. Now that I'm done grading week 2, I can publish that content. But first, we have to talk about the grades and who stood out in a good way and why, and who maybe left some questions. The Dolphins had a number of transactions yesterday. I do want to acknowledge because one of them includes a player that played in this game defensively that we're going to mention when we get to linebackers, and that's Zeke Vandenberg. The Dolphins waived him yesterday as a part of a slew of moves. They also released Savon Ahmed. They placed Sean Harlow on injured reserve, as well as Willie Snead at wide receiver. So Harlow, offensive lineman, had a really nice debut against Atlanta for the first week of the preseason. Got hurt in this game with a really nasty-looking lower body injury, was able to walk off. But his season is over, as is Willie Snead's. But when you look over on the defensive side of the ball and this performance that was had for the Dolphins against Washington, you start up front, you get excited about a couple of the young guys and their performances. Chop Robinson obviously had the explosive play on the tackle for the loss where he almost took the handoff from the quarterback to the running back. I thought Muhammad Kamara played a better game. And there was an undrafted free agent in Brandon Peely who had a sack in the second half of this game, but had some nice pursuit moments, had some good lateral flow moments, had a few moments of anchoring inside. Is it all the way consistent yet? No. But that's okay. Across 28 snaps, played really well. So when I grade the tape, if this is the first one of these that you've caught, just know that the scoring scale on every play for every player based on their assignment is a -2 to a +2. That is the core foundation of how Pro Football Focus does their player grades. But they then convert it to a score out of 100, and they apply weights for certain positions with grades doing certain things, being more valuable. I don't care about any of that. I want to know 0 is you met baseline expectation on all the plays that you had on average. Were your contributions above or below expectation, and to what degree? That is the hope that I have with this project. We're going to do this for the preseason. All the grades, all of that is going to be available here on the YouTube channel and then over on Substack at Touchdown Miami for you guys to consume in the preseason. Then we will reset and recalibrate and do it for the regular season as well. So as this season unfolds, we're going to have really detailed pictures as far as why certain guys are succeeding or failing, and to the magnitude of which on a play-by-play basis, they are succeeding or failing. So let's start with, well, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to put this up on the screen. Let's start with the defensive linemen in this contest against Washington and their grades. Muhammad Kamara, your top scorer. He was the top scorer on defense. Brandon Peely, your next best scorer along the defensive line. I thought you had really solid performances from Quentin Bell, Jonathan Harris, Nevo Gallimore, Isaiah Mack, Chop Robinson. The starters, Sealer, Agba, Campbell, those guys didn't really get a whole lot of run. Washington hit them with some tempo. They took a lot of quick throws to the outside, so it was hard for them to perform up front above expectation when the ball is out in 1.6 seconds, which was on average what it was. So I try not don't read too much into if you're looking at the scores and seeing Sealer, Campbell played 7 snaps, Agba played 6. None of them had anything above baseline expectation. Why is that? And well, part of that is dictated on the play call of the offense and the play call of the defense. When I look at the edge group as a whole, Chop Robinson had the best play. He also had a number of plays where in run support, I thought maybe his angles were a little too steep, which allowed runs to tuck back up inside of him where Washington ran pulling guards at him. There was one time where they ran a couple of dives and they left him unblocked off the edge. He was crashing around down really hard and he almost got it. And then they pulled it with Jaden Daniels on the second possession and he pulled the ball out and they ran zone read. And they optioned it off Chop Robinson. And Chop was in the opposite side A-gap before Jaden Daniels broke the line of scrimmage. So nice learning lessons there about the patience of trusting your technique. You don't have to make every play, even though you have the athleticism to make rarefied plays, like when the tackle busts and turns, you lose through the B-gap, and you come crashing in there and you almost take the handoff for a touchdown. Chop had more positive plays than what his score as a plus half of 1 point, which would be the equivalence of one above expectation play. The tackle for loss that he had was a +1, which is an outstanding play. But the other plays for Chop, there were some negative plays, particularly against the run, that cut down on that score, which could have been in the Mohamed Kamara, Brandon Peely stratosphere. What I liked about Mohamed Kamara is they ran him out there at the end of the game. He played more snaps than anybody other than Wyatt Ray defensively. Mohamed Kamara plays 38 snaps in this game. Obviously had the sack, which was a big splash play where he ducked inside of the tackle, but really physical, taking on tight ends and guards and guys that pulled at him. Like, he slammed that door shut. And that was when you drafted both Mohamed Kamara and Chop Robinson. That was one of the things that was a part of the analysis that I had, and expectation is Kamara's really physical. And what he likes to do is he likes to take blows to offensive linemen, whereas Chop's game, at least at Penn State, was more predicated around forcing missed blocks and getting penetration. And in a game in which they tried to run power and counter, and they tried to kind of tuck it up in the C gap and kick the end man on the line of scrimmage out, Kamara really handled that element well, and then also had a plus play in the pass rush. He had a couple of really good bull rushes late in that game too, against one, including one against Chris Paul, which is Patrick Paul's brother, to walk the right tackle back into the lap of the quarterback and create some pressure. So Kamara, Peely, Quentin Bell, a couple of solid reps. Didn't have the splash play. We're still hoping for the splash play, especially as a guy who was so hot early on in training camp, and your perception was, hey, this guy might end up being your early down starter. But a lot of what Quentin Bell has done well has been his athleticism taking over, and that's across 2 games too, in my opinion, where he was a little bit more quiet in the first game than we were hoping for as well. His athleticism takes over in a scheme that is as multiple and dynamic as what we're seeing Anthony Weaver's scheme to be. That is going to do it for our spotlight of the defensive front. I would say, if I had to pick somebody who I think lost some ground in this game, Deshaun Hand played a pretty reasonable amount of snaps. A lot of double teams, a lot of combos. I thought he lost ground on a lot of them. And that's something for him moving forward as we try to project him into a potential spot on this rotation, you're going to want to see a little bit better anchor at the point of attack to help do your part to keep the runs and the line of scrimmage stuffed up so that there's not these creases that backs can take slashing runs through. We're talking about corners, safeties, the secondary next here on Locked On Dolphins, so make sure you stick with us. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, but we have something different for you for the start of football season. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's number one sportsbook. In the secondary, they're going to have some hard decisions to make. This was a group that had one player who scored a negative per snap per basis contribution. One player. And that's between Marcus May, Isaiah Johnson, Mark Perry, Storm Duck, Cam Smith, Jason Maitre all played at least 30 snaps. Then you had Jordan Colbert played 23, Nick Needham played 17, Kader Kohu played 28, Kendall Fuller played 17, Saran Neal played 18, Patrick McMorris played 24, and Elijah Campbell played 28. These guys played a lot. They played a lot of ball on the back end. A lot of different combinations across 13 guys. And you had one guy score negative on a per snap basis. Dolphins got to be pumped up about Marcus May. That's my number one takeaway in the secondary as it stands with the talent that the Dolphins have. From a per play basis, Marcus May had the best day of any player in the secondary, and he played the first half of the game. And he was all over the place. Now, maybe not a ton of necessarily dynamic splash plays in pass coverage, but he could play confidently on the back end. And he played single high. It wasn't like he was just back there playing two high safety shells and taking half the field and la-di-da, forcing stuff to go underneath because he's got leverage on vertical routes. That wasn't what he was doing. And they were passing off crossing routes and showing good communication in doing so. But him coming downhill, him deconstructing blocks, him playing on the second level, him getting up to the line of scrimmage and run support, him breaking down stuff for perimeter screens, it's all really good for Marcus May. I cannot imagine a world, and I know Elijah Campbell's got a lot of run and he plays special teams, and Patrick McMorris has popped a little bit. I cannot imagine a world in which Marcus May is a surprise casualty for this football team. He is balling. He's playing real good football. And I just said everything that I had to say and was very complimentary about the 13 guys and their performance as a unit. And Jalen Ramsey, Javon Holland, and Jordan Poyer didn't play in the game. So I think that I'm really excited about what this group can look like. Marcus May was the top performer. Jordan Colbert's your next performer across 23 snaps. That is boosted by the forced fumble that he did have. That was a splash play that without it would have left him in the bottom third. But when you don't play a ton of snaps versus some of these guys playing 10, 15 more snaps than you do, and you have a big play like that to force a turnover, you get credit for it. So that's where Jordan Colbert shows up here by forcing the turnover. Undrafted free agents, the name of the game, the next 5 guys, whether this year or past years: Isaiah Johnson, Mark Perry, Nick Needham, Storm Duck, Kader Kohu. And every single one of those guys had multiple plus plays with negligible negatives. I'm going to have a really hard time saying goodbye to Isaiah Johnson. I mean, this is just a guy who is my cup of tea as it pertains to like what kind of football player you are. He is pressing guys out of bounds. He is lockstep with guys on the perimeter. He is getting off that. The contrast of Cam Smith as a second-round pick and his effort getting off blocks on the perimeter against the run and screen game. And I thought Cam Smith settled into the game pretty well. But the first two possessions in particular for Cam Smith, you contrast the effort that you got, and it's just effort to get off of blocks. I'm sorry, you're Cam Smith. Olamide Zaccheaus shouldn't be blocking you to the sideline. And you contrast that to Isaiah Johnson. He don't got time for blocks. He says, get out of here. Do not touch me. And he tackles like a safety. I'm just absolutely enthralled by this player, Isaiah Johnson. I would not have the stones to try to pass him through to the practice squad. Corners like that don't grow everywhere, and now he's got good game tape in consecutive games. Did he get bailed out by Jason Maitre a little bit in the last play of the game? Yes. Because for all of the compliments that I can give Isaiah Johnson, at the end of the day, you're 6'3", you're not going to be the fastest foot fire guy because you're so long. And they run a slant on him, and he plays soft press because he doesn't want to give up the fade and get beat at the line of scrimmage. But gets beat inside. But Jason Maitre's running a nickel pressure, and he has this leaping disruption of the quarterback to force the throw to be high and behind, and the pass is incomplete, and the Dolphins win the football game. Mark Perry would have been better scored if he didn't fumble after the interception, which he tried to run back. It's an unfortunate play for him. I did love seeing him kind of get right back in the swing of it, answer the call. He had key coverage on second down on that final possession in the red zone with Washington knocking on the door. Cam Smith had a rough start. I thought his first two possessions were pretty frustrating as far as the missed tackle on Terry McLaurin along the sideline. And then the run support stuff that Washington ran, I think, to the right side, to his side 3 or 4 times in the following possession, and just not the edge that you needed to have there. What he was able to do after that, though, was settled in and made a key tackle in space and coverage to force a short completion, and had the long down the field up the sideline pass defense that he had. And the fact that he got hurt is even more of a bummer because he was done with defense. He was only out there for special teams, and that's where his hamstring tweaked. So Mike McDaniel did say yesterday he was week to week. So hopefully we don't have too long of a prolonged issue here, but at some point the issue becomes the issue, right? And if you're not healthy to play, you're not going to play, period. I thought Kendall Fuller looked the part. Didn't get a lot of runs, 17 snaps. Did have really tight coverage on one of the first completions of the game that I thought was good coverage. It was just better ball, better catch. And with plays like that, I score that as a 0, right? Like you did all you can do in coverage. And Kendall Fuller's one of the guys that across a smaller sample size had a successful performance by all measurements, but not necessarily one that leads the headlines from a scoring and a per snap average basis with this scoring methodology that we're implementing this year to kind of quantify how good guys play. We're going to get into the linebackers next, and then we will briefly look at the full grades for the game in week 2 and have a few talking points for the year to date from the Dolphins preseason defensive grades. That's coming up next here on Locked On Dolphins, so make sure that you stick with us. I'm trying hot tea. You didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It's something a little different to have a little bit more mellow tone, slow me down a little bit. Linebackers. This is why this group is why this project is so important to me. Because Everybody likes to use different resources that provide context for player performance. And more often than not, they like to do it when your narrative or your opinion is backed by whatever numbers can back it, right? It's the best thing in the world. And then if the same resource has something that goes against something that you think you vehemently disagree with, it's the worst thing in the world. Jordan Brooks was graded by one outlet as the worst player on the Dolphins defense on Saturday night against the Commanders. I don't think so. I thought he played better than David Long. I thought Jordan Brooks was electric. Now, did he make every play? No. Was there a run fit opportunity when they ran and Chop Robinson gets sealed and kicked out? And you've got somebody who climbs up on you where you could have negotiated that block maybe a little bit more aggressively and help prevent sticking your head inside, your outside leverage, and then you stick your head inside, but the safety's inside, so now you're both inside. So the back cuts outside that block, and it gets outside of both of you, and it goes for a nice gain. And you leave the corner on an island to try and tackle with the corners out there dancing around with Olamide Zaccheaus. Yes. But that's reflected as an under expectation play on a run that went for 8 yards. I'm not going to kill the guy's score over. What he did from a pressure perspective, what he did from a downhill perspective, from an aggressive perspective, this guy's going to be a weapon for the Dolphins. And I think the best news for somebody else in the room that could possibly be for is Channing Tindall. Because while Channing Tindall is not there in coverage, Channing Tindall, we got to the end of this game, Channing Tindall, who played 40 snaps, they say, you know what? You're playing forward, and you're going to go get it on every play. Blitz. And with the first several plays with the starters, with Jordan Brooks and David Long out there, they're firing linebackers through gaps. They are creating chaos in the front. And it was a really nice opportunity to get an affirmation of what the personality of this unit is going to be like. And it blew my mind that Jordan Brooks could be graded as the worst player in a 30 out of 100. No way. And that's why the project is important to me, to do the workload for myself for this team, so that I can say, you know, I've watched every play for every player and assigned them an execution score for it. And it helps I will have all the conviction in the world in that I'm not going to pull a number that somebody else did and have somebody else tell me how to think. I did the work. So I don't care what that says, what Jordan Brooks's performance score was. Across 17 snaps, he had the second best per play grade for linebackers in the game. Curtis Bolton was the one who had the highest, and he got run all throughout the second half playing against third-string guys. And that's not a shot at Curtis Bolton. I think Curtis Bolton played his rear end off in each of the Dolphins' first two playoff games, or first two preseason games. Curtis Bolton's played 100 snaps in the preseason. And while there's highs and lows with him, as far as maybe getting a little too over-eager to try to get down into fits as a guy who's an undersized linebacker, and then that leaves some voids behind you where Washington was successfully able to throw over top of him on more than one occasion. He flies around. If you told me he made the team for special teams, I wouldn't be the least a bit surprised. I guess I should probably put the grades up so you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it for yourself. That would probably be a smart thing for me to do. Curtis Bolton, Jordan Brooks, Channing Tindall, David Long across 11 snaps, had a really nice fit on the first play of the game with how he got down into the line of scrimmage. I thought David Long, where he was hurt in this game from a performance perspective, was the threat of the quarterback out the backside held him a lot. And I think that led to a little bit of extra hesitancy with him getting into his pursuit of the football. And I get it. You got to honor a guy like Jaden Daniels out the back door. So I understand why. But that meant there was just a few times where he was maybe a little bit slower to get into pursuit and was caught out of a position as a result, trying to leverage the threat of the run from the quarterback. But that's why you call running quarterbacks and athletic quarterbacks and guys that can use their legs at quarterback math changers, because they change the math. It's exactly why you call those players that kind of complement. Zeke Vandenberg is grayed out here. The Dolphins did waive him yesterday. I thought he really struggled. I thought he was one of the guys who contributed to the big Jeff Driscoll 40-yard run at quarterback. Kind of came too sharp downhill out of a zone drop and then came way too flat, and he runs a 4.8. You got to take good angles. And for as good as he was at some times, and this includes like training camp, not just the preseason games, like fitting downhill runs between the tackles. The rest of this stuff in space, you could tell, is still new to him because he only converted to off-ball linebacker when he came to Miami. And it looked like it appeared to be a hamstring that tweaked on him. You see him reach up and grab it on the last play that he was on, and then Curtis Bolton came back on to finish the game. So Channing Tindall, more good than bad this week, but still a player that I think is a high variance player. I think the best versions of Channing Tindall still come when they give him a binary decision to make. Go downhill, or not even a binary decision to make. A singular objective on the play. Blitz the B gap. Blow up the running back. Now, he ran a really nice twist stunt and helped turn loose some pressure inside. He can run like the wind. Is it enough in what is a highly competitive linebacker room between Jordan Brooks and David Long and Duke Riley and Channing Tindall and Curtis Bolton? That is the ultimate special teams versus special ability debate. And I do not envy the Dolphins' decision there, because Tindall, he's in year 3 as a outside the top 100 picks, late 3rd round pick, right? Like at this point, you shouldn't be guaranteed anything. But you can't deny the physical skills that he has. And there's overlap with what he does best with a portion of Jordan Brooks's resume and what his role is going to look like. Whereas Curtis Bolton, you picked up off waivers. Curtis Bolton's played better football. I'm sorry, he has. But he doesn't have the potential that Channing Tindall does. So what do you do with that? Good luck. Good luck sorting that one out. Full grades for the entirety of the game. I want to give my 5 stars, and then guys that I'm looking for maybe a little bit more on the back end against Tampa Bay. So here are the grades and the 5 stars that I had from the game. Muhammad Kamara, Brandon Peely, Marcus May, Jordan Colbert, Isaiah Johnson's on a per play grade basis. Your top 5 best performers above expectation. And again, there's starters in here. David Long, Emmanuel Agba, Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell. Those guys, it was a really vanilla, brief performance for them on the opening possession. I don't read too much into them not having above expectation plays because the circumstances of the game didn't necessarily allow for it. It's important context for this too. You would just think, as somebody across a full body of work of a season, particularly when you start playing the games for keeps, that's when guys like Sealer and Campbell and David Long, like I would expect their contributions will be much more prominent and measurable. Guys I'd like to see a little bit more from, I'd like to see a bit of a bounce back from Elijah Campbell, who had a good performance in the game against Atlanta. I didn't think this was his best showing, and with Marcus May playing the way that he is at third safety spot, if it is a competition, Marcus is not making it easy on Elijah Campbell. And that kind of puts Elijah Campbell back into the fray of can you hold off Patrick McMorris? We saw some Nick Needham at safety too. So that group at the end of it is very muddy. Robert Cooper was just signed recently. He only played 4 snaps, but one of those he got turned perpendicular to the line of scrimmage on a run in which he was the backside interior defender. For somebody who his strength should be anchoring and playing at the point of attack. I want to see what else is there, especially with some of the injuries that the Dolphins have already incurred. Benito Jones, what is his timeline? We don't know. So if Robert Cooper is going to be a contingency plan for us, we're going to need to see. That is going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys for checking out the show. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Again, if you want to see and sit down and look at the grades and see the year to date, and you want to see some film clips that gets associated, the next step for me is posting and publishing this to Touchdown Miami, which is my long-form Miami Dolphins written Substack that is available. You could search Touchdown Miami and find it. I'll put a link in the show description if you want to find it that way. And that can really help you. I intend for that to be a complementary element. It's not necessary for processing and consuming the show because it is a standalone thing, right? But if you want to amplify the things that we talk about here on the show and see and get into the weeds with some of the projects that we do this season, that's definitely something I would recommend that you check out. I'm Kyle Krabs. Keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. Make it a great rest of your day. I'm out of here. Go Fins.